Welcome to the Love Your Story podcast. Do you remember Shannon Bahrke Happe, the two-time Olympian skier? Well, because it's December, because it's ski season, because it's winter, I wanted to bring you this wonderful winter treat of having her be a guest on the show, but also being able to, at the end of the year, tie in some mindset things that we will take with us into the beginning of the new year that can help us to create the lives we want on purpose. So let me remind you a little bit about who Shannon is. Her 12-year career on the U.S. ski team, that was big, but all of these things included, she was a member of 3 Olympic teams, so 2002 and 2006, 2010. She received the bronze medal in Vancouver in Canada in 2010. She got the silver medal in Salt Lake in 2002. She was a member of 6 world championship teams. I mean, this woman has a long list of accomplishments here. She was a member of the U.S. Freestyle Ski Team for 12 years. She was on the A team, on the top 10 in the world or higher for all 12 years that she was skiing. She had a World Cup title in 2003 and 7 World Cup wins. And she stood on that podium 26 times and 6 U.S. national championships. We're so glad to have her on the show because what we're going to talk about is how does someone overcome obstacles and doubts and fears to accomplish at the level that she accomplished. So she's going to share mindset and tools and strategies that not only apply to an Olympian, but that directly correlate to how everyone can execute them to achieve their maximum potential, which is what she's doing now, is helping other people gain the understanding for this type of life fulfillment and accomplishment. So stay tuned for all of her energy. Stories are our lives in language. Welcome to the Love Your Story podcast. I'm Lori Lee, and I'm excited for our future together of telling stories, evaluating our own stories, and lifting ourselves and others to greater places because of our control over our stories. This podcast is about empowerment and giving you, the listener, ideas to work with in making your stories work for you. Story power serves you best when you know how to use it. Today's show is titled, Your Extraordinary Starts Now. And Shannon Bahrke Happe is here to talk about how she did it. Welcome, Shannon.
Yay! Thank you so much for having me here. Woo!
I'm so glad to have you here. And we always start with your story. And I listened to your TED Talk where you talked about how average you felt that you were as you were kind of growing up and as you were starting into preparing for, skiing and skiing with all the people that were training. And yet here you are with a 12-year career on the U.S. ski team and 2 Olympic medals. How did you go from average person to Olympic medal winner?
Well, okay. And I just want to let you know, I am still very much average. I am never the smartest person in the room, especially when I'm speaking to children, at elementary schools and high schools. And then when I go into corporate, no, I'm just kidding. But no, really, I am just your average person. And I think, recognizing that I am not a prodigy, never was a prodigy, never had, like Michael Phelps amazingness and Tiger Woods amazingness, that if I wanted to dream big and I wanted to accomplish things like those athletes, I had to figure out a way to do it in the body that I have and the skill level that I was given. So for me, I worked as hard as I could physically, but for me, the thing that I had to work on and I had to recognize that in order to be great, I had to figure out the mental toughness piece and the emotional toughness piece. And when, you're given those opportunities, how can you capitalize on it? And so that's really where I learned in my Olympic career that I could shine my brightest and turn this average person into somebody that had extraordinary performances.
How hard was it to get that kind of mental toughness and emotional toughness?
Well, you have to hit rock bottom. before you realize that, you need to make a change. And so for me, that really came in 2002 when I was trying to make my first Olympic team. I was skiing the best I've ever skied in my whole life, and I was prepared. I was ranked 6th in the world. I was, skiing just, I felt physically the best and most prepared that I could be. But every time I got in the gate, when we had World Cups where we were qualifying for those Olympics, I would just completely fall apart and crumble. And it kept getting worse and worse and worse. And so I found myself with only 3 World Cups left to qualify for the Olympics. And I wasn't even close to it. And I remember going home over Christmas and just having a breakdown with my family. And my mom said, maybe you need to work on your mental toughness, and maybe you can find some help with a hypnotherapist. And I just thought that was the weirdest, stupidest thing that anybody had ever told me.
Did you do it?
I absolutely did it. My mom said, well, do you have another choice? And I said, well, Mom, I don't. She's like, well, then maybe you should listen to your mother. So like a good daughter, I was like, oh my gosh, I rolled my eyes as big as I could and then followed my mom's advice. And I learned, in those times when the pressure was really on, and when I felt super vulnerable, and when I knew that I needed to perform, I was focusing on all the wrong things. I was focusing on all the things that I couldn't control, and my biggest fears and my past failures and people's expectations. And when you have your focus on those negative things, that's your body follows that. So I really learned how to switch, focusing on, the key words that I needed to tell myself, the positivity, trying to remember what it feels like in your body to have a perfect mogul run, and when everything's going good and you feel in the flow and you feel in the zone. And then also I really worked on this thing called perfect practice makes perfect. And it's kind of the idea and the belief that, if you just kind of go through life doing things average, then that's how you're going to show up to your biggest moments. But if you really strategically in your mind visualize greatness and what you want to do, there's a lot of studies that say if you visualize perfection, it's almost like doing it physically.
I've seen that. Yeah, that you get the same or better performance just from visualizing it.
Yeah, so it changed my whole world, and it really showed me the possibility that our mind is so powerful, and if we train it and if we use it, that it will execute for us.
So how much training did you have to do? Like, how many times do you have to visualize to get that to sink in?
Well, it took a long time. So I worked with my hypnotherapist almost every single day for the next 3 weeks. But since that time when I learned how to do that, it was something that I worked on 2 or 3 hours a day for the rest of my career. And it's something that I still carry with me today. So positive self-communication and visualization is one of the only things as a human that we have control over. So you say to ourselves.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And you started a coffee shop a few years ago. And, you've done some other things since then. Have you used those visualization techniques and the things you wanted to accomplish outside of skiing?
Absolutely. And I work with, in my company that I own now called Team Empower Hour, we do team building and leadership development. And I've also designed a leadership program called the Will Program. And in all of the things that I talk about, we have control over those things, and it's how we put them to use that really matters. So before I get on stage to do a big, keynote presentation, what are the things that I really have to physically remember to do? I have to remember to breathe. I have to remember to look people in the eye and remember those important words that keep me on track. So I teach people, you don't want to visualize. I always hear people saying, oh my gosh, well, visualize you're at your home resort skiing, and when you get into that big moment that you're just at home skiing. And I'm like, but you're not, you're at the Olympics. So you have to train for that moment instead of expecting those big moments to feel small.
Mm.
So, working with people that are salespeople, talking about, their biggest pitches with their biggest clients when it matters the most, you have to prepare for that moment and think about all of the ways that you have to prepare and perform and put those together. And that's what you need to visualize and self-communicate every single day.
Oh, I like that. So when you talk about, like, we named this episode Your Extraordinary Starts Now because that's what you teach. So when you're teaching people to be extraordinary, you are talking specifically about this mindset tool.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different things that I think, I always start people out at the very beginning before we even get to, steps 4 or 5. Are you doing something you're passionate about? Are you doing something that you love? And if you are, how do we get you to those next steps, and how do we put in that mental piece?
And
But
what if you're not?
Then how do we do what?
Yeah, I'm just saying, what if you're not? What if you're just gainfully employed in positive things in the culture?
Yeah,
but it's not your passion.
And if you are, that's okay, right? Some of us have to do the things every single day that maybe we're not super passionate about, but is there something that still lights your fire in what you do? I remember when I was on the US ski team and I worked at a check sorting facility for Wells Fargo, I think. And I could only have that job. What we did was separate. So every time you deposited a check in the bank, it goes somewhere. And they have to manually sort it all to make sure that it gets through all the right places. You had no idea that actually happens, but that does. And there was people like me that used to sort all the checks. And it was a horrible job. Like, it was so boring. It was mindless. And it was, I had to do it at night because I trained during the day. But I found the value in what I was doing, that it was helping me accomplish my bigger goal of, chasing my dreams to go to the Olympics. So sometimes maybe the work that we're not doing isn't speaking to our soul, but it's allowing us to do other things. And how do we find the value in that? And then how do we find the value in the path and what we're going to do moving forward?
I think there's also this idea of whatever you're doing, do it to the very best of your ability. Because I remember reading a story, and I think we talked about this in a previous episode, but there was a restroom assistant and then a parking garage guy. And they had shared some examples of how they just made it their own. They did the very best job that they could at it. So even though it's something that you would seem perhaps more menial labor, they'd sing to their clients and they do just the extra mile and everything that they did to make it interesting and to have pride in their work and all sorts of things. So I think it doesn't matter so much what you're doing. It doesn't even matter if you're completely passionate about it. I think there are ways to live really big. And if you do want to move out of it, I think this mindset that you're talking about with the visualization of what's next is super key to taking you to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And you never know who's watching. You could just be going along, doing your job, doing the best thing. And somebody's like, hey, I see that you are putting so much passion and effort and love into this thing. What if we give you this? What if I offer you this job? Or if you, can do this? Maybe that, somebody recognizes what you're doing in your hard work and may change your life forever. So,
and you're much more likely to get an opportunity like that if you're really, knocking it out of the park.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think we can all agree that great things are going to take work, right?
Yes.
And I feel a little bit like perhaps in this upcoming generation that there's a sense of entitlement because they've always had so much. And I've noticed that when it comes to a time where whoever they is, but often that the younger generation, when they have to work really hard for something, that they often think, oh, this isn't meant for me. This isn't just coming easily to me. So this must not be my path. And I think that's a huge mistake, because you have to work hard for great things, and you have to remember that if you want to accomplish things. So let's talk about how to develop that mental toughness. Is there anything that you can do with that besides just practicing the visualization?
I think that and how we spend our time is so important. And I think right now I see the younger generation as very goal oriented, right? They know what they want. They are big thinkers. They are the generation that wants to, really attack climate change. They want to, have their own unicorn business, in the entrepreneurial world. They want big things, right? But they also see at the same time that you can accomplish these big things in such a short amount of time. And that to me is the real danger.
The instant gratification.
It's the instant gratification, right? Like, for us, we remember, when I was little, you couldn't even like find a song. You had to listen to it on the radio. And then when it came on, you had to have two cassette players that were right next to each other, right at the right moment, and press the play and record to even get the song, right?
You're so dating yourself.
I know. I'm okay with that. But now you can just go, Siri, what's this song? And then all of a sudden it's instantly. So I think for and for even us, right? It's our generation too that now sees the possibility of the big things that we can have and that we can do it quicker. And so my advice to that is you have to love what you do every single day, because most likely 9 out of 10 times it's not going to come fast. And you're going to hit those roadblocks. And so what I think about so much is I think about the end result and what that is, and using that as motivation to keep us going through those hard times. But you just have to love where you're at, and you have to genuinely really enjoy what you do every single day.
So the problem that I see with this is that not everybody knows what they love. And as I talk with some people, particularly, kids that are in college or coming up, part of their frustration and part of the reason that they are discouraged with life is that when they get on social media and see the people who do know where they're going, who do know their calling, and they are in more of a state of, I have no idea. Like I could do anything, but I don't feel particularly like passionate about anything. There are those people too. You're not always. So what do you do when you're those people? How do you excel? How do you find your way?
Yeah, I think it's hard. I feel very much this happened to me at the beginning of COVID. My new business, Team Empower Hour, that I had just built was finally getting off the ground after 2 years of really, really hard work and figuring it out. I was just like, oh my gosh, finally, finally people get it. Yes, I'm booking more. I'm, my passion, I'm learning, I'm, exactly where I need to be. And then COVID happened. And so people kept asking me, well, how are you going to change? How are you going to do it virtually? How are you going to do this? But my answer was like, I don't want to do it that way. I don't want to create an entire virtual company because that's not what speaks to me. But now on the other hand, how am I going to make it? In the beginning, remember, it was like, how are we going to make it these 3 months of no income? How am I going to make it 3 months? And then as it went further to a year to 2 years, can I hang on and still keep my why? And so I think that, it takes a lot of soul searching, and sometimes it takes turning off your social media and stop having those, we know those reactions that come whenever we feel, fear of missing out and fear of what everybody else has, just turning it off and doing the things that make you happy. And it's been a long 2 years of that. And I would say that I struggled a lot. And just when I would find like, I always call it the false summit. Just when I think, oh my gosh, I've made it to the summit. I pushed through it. It's awesome. Then I'd look to my left and I'd be like, oh my gosh, the mountain is still another 2,000 feet away. So I think it's just remembering that it's not going to be easy, and you cannot climb a mountain by running up it. Sometimes you can only do it by walking. And sometimes you get to a point where you're like, oh my gosh, I can no longer go this way. I have to go back down, cross over, and go back up that way.
And sometimes it's just trial and error, don't you think, with life? Like you try something to see if that's going to be what really works for you. And when it doesn't, you don't get discouraged. You have to look at, this was part of the path, so I could cross this off my list. And now we'll, try the next thing. The process, right? There's a journey involved in accomplishment, even if that accomplishment is really just getting to know yourself and creating the life you want.
Yeah. I always say, when we had our coffee business, it was so much fun to see an idea come right from the ground up. Like here we are, we're starting with nothing. We did a bunch of research on what roaster to buy. And we, did a bunch of research on what we wanted to name our company. And we hired, graphic design lady to do it. And to see our vision come to life was so cool. But then once we got to the everyday things, I was like, oh my gosh, this is not my passion anymore. This is not what I want to do. I don't want to be in a warehouse in the middle of Salt Lake City with a coffee roaster, like almost going to burn down the building every day. And so there is so much value in figuring out what you don't want, as opposed to what you want all the time. And I really feel like that is one of my greatest lessons that I ever learned with having our coffee business, was it is what I don't want to do. Fully okay with that. And do I feel like a failure because I couldn't realize what I had originally set out to do? Absolutely. I feel that fear of failure. But I also value so much learning that that's not what I wanted to do and pushing me into a direction that feels so much more right in my soul. And that is the feeling of victory within itself, is knowing you want to do something else.
Interesting. I have a couple examples of that too. When I first got my opportunity to teach at a university, when I was doing my master's degree, I had thought for years that I wanted to teach in academia. And then when I got there and was doing it, I thought, this is not what I thought it would be, and at first I thought, wow, that really unmoors me. I thought that was my ultimate goal. And then I had to reconsider. That doesn't mean I won't ever do it. It just means that it turned out to be something very different than I thought it was going to be. And then with Love Your Story over the years, this is our 6th year. And the first few years I was doing a lot of speaking, public speaking. And I've always been good at public speaking. And so I thought, wouldn't that be great to just do that on a regular basis? And then I found that every public speaking opportunity that I had, I wanted it to come off like a TED Talk. So I felt like I had to memorize it all. And so then for a month before the presentation, I was stressing about it and trying to memorize it. And it would take so much pressure. It just created so much pressure for me every day, almost dreading the preparation of it, that I thought, I don't want to live with that kind of pressure on me every single day. So maybe that's not, not the thing I want to capitalize on. And again, that doesn't mean I don't want to come and speak to your group or that I won't share my ideas, because for sure. But, I learned that it wasn't something I want to develop on I don't want to start a speaking tour or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a process. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing that, so many people want to tell you what to do. They're like, oh, Shannon, you would be really great at that. I'm like, everybody wants me to be a TV commentator. Shannon, oh, you'd be so great at that. And I'm like, but I don't love speaking into a lens. I don't. I really don't. That is not the medium that I love. I love speaking to people. And almost the preparation for that, right, of doing that, has that like gave me heart palpitations. I was like, oh my gosh, I have to get everybody's name right, and I have to know all their stats, and I have to like that. It made me so nervous. Whereas keynote speaking, it's just more of a conversation for me. So it's funny that you had that feeling with that. So yeah, I like every day, someone's like, oh, you should do TV. And I'm like, no, I shouldn't. No, I'm good. I'm really good with where I'm at. So it's funny that, just being able to say no, just because somebody else sees your potential, knowing what's true into your heart is more important.
Every day we have choices to create the life we want. And sometimes that's saying no. And sometimes, and that journey, I think the journey is very important to note that it's not a direct line. And I don't think you want it to be a direct line. Otherwise, think of all the experiences you'd miss.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I've lived like 5 lifetimes in my lifetime.
Right.
And, and I think that's so incredible. It's so much fun to have tried something and say, that is not for me. Or, oh my gosh, yes, I would do that every single day the rest of my life if I could. So it's no
till you try, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm so thankful to be married to my husband, because when we met, he owned a bike shop, really successful bike shop. He then started the coffee company with me, sold that, became a fly fishing guide, and just sold that piece to his partner, and now owns an HVAC business.
Oh wow!
What 4 businesses can you get further apart? And just be good at them all? Like, that's pretty awesome. It's very inspiring to me. And I love to be around his creativity every day.
Oh, it's nice to have that, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
So you have an adage, always do one more. What does that mean?
Well, it was funny. Before COVID, I would speak to all kinds of companies about one more, and how can you be more productive? How can you do one more sale? How can you, capture one more customer? How could you, just get. And now I find, that one more is really about kind of how can we take care of ourselves? How can we do one more minute of every single day for us to maybe live mindfully, maybe to just sit here and breathe, maybe to leave work a minute early? Can we write a thank you to our team, to somebody special on a team, and notice how incredible they've become, or the effort that they've put forward, or maybe they're having a hard time? What's one more thing, during the day that we can do to honor ourselves and the team and the people that we work with? So it really stemmed from, just doing one little ounce of effort a day, one more squat, one more pull up. And when that added up over time, how much more work and energy you were able to put into something. I like to think about, if you put in a penny every single day into the bank, over time, you've got like $100, and you didn't even know you put $100 in there. Slow. But those small efforts really add up. So that's an important thing that I really try to share to everybody, and especially instill in my own kids.
So final thoughts as we are tying up the interview on living extraordinary lives on purpose. What do you really want us to know?
I just want we only get one shot at this life, and you can either live it for somebody else and other people's expectations and what they think you should do, or you can live it for you. And I really encourage, if everybody has the means and the time, to do it for you, because that's all we get.
So tell us a little bit about what you are offering and how people can get a hold of you.
Yeah, so I do corporate team building and leadership development and keynote speaking. I hire only Olympians that facilitate all of my sessions. So kind of seeing success through our lens. and fun Olympic stories is always really nice. So you can find my company, teamempowerhour.com. And then also everything, all things pink, sparkly, and unicorns at my website, which is shannonbahrke.com. I'm also on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook under @Shannon Bahrke. So, and you can find me in my house being a mom. So that's pretty much it.
And in the show notes for this episode on the website, loveyourstorypodcast.com, I'll have all her contact information. So you can go there to find her links and to figure out how to get a hold of her. Yay. Thanks for being here, Shannon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and best wishes. And just thank you to your audience for listening and having me, and keep crushing life, everybody.
So fun on this Christmas, winter, December episode to talk to such a skiing icon. And I want to end with just 2 quotes. Henry Ford said, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're probably right." This is all about that mindset. And it just applies to every single part of our lives. Albert Einstein said, quote, "In the middle of difficulty lies opportunity," unquote. I think that these simple truths are really key to whether we live the lives that we want on purpose and whether we can accomplish things like getting that mental toughness and that emotional toughness and using the tools to accomplish and live the lives that we really want to live. I hope you've enjoyed the talk with Shannon today, because she is definitely an example of being able to do that. Like she mentioned, we only have one life to live. So why not make it something fabulous and unforgettable? What does that mean for you? As we're coming into the end of the year here, we do the same thing we always do at the end of the year. We take stock of where we've been, and then we get ready to set goals and do things a little differently in the coming year to make some progress. And I feel like this is a really key and fabulous episode to kind of end the last part of the year with, because it's time to take stock. So your challenge is to take a few minutes to take stock of where your mindset has been. Have you been using these tools? Are there places where you can use, well, first of all, are you creating this brilliant life, this one life that you want to live that's fabulous and unforgettable? And if you're not, what would that look like? So maybe grab a notebook and kind of write some of those things out. What do you want to do with the rest of your life? You can call it a bucket list if you want, but you can also just call it, what haven't I accomplished that I still want to? What's in front of me? And then I would encourage you to use this mental technique that we were talking about here, where you spend some time completely visualizing everything out of what your life looks like as you create that thing, as you overcome whatever obstacles might be in front of you, or like you doing the thing that you want to do and how that makes you feel, and bring all of those senses into it. Sometimes it's just small and simple things that make this huge difference, but I believe that focus and pulling in the tools that can help you with a path of mindset shifts, positive talk shifts. It's a choice to do the one more thing, right? A choice to keep at it, a choice to follow your intuition, not your fear. And before you know it, life is big and bold and extraordinary. Yes, may 2023 be all of those things for you, because you're willing to do that work, the small and simple things. So we will see you in 2 weeks. My ask for you is, will you please share this with somebody? They're super easy to share on your app. Just, hit the arrow, share it in a text, send it to somebody that you love, and create some good in the world. And if you love it, we'd also love for you to leave a review. Thanks for being here. We'll see you in 2 weeks.